Hi, everyone, and thank you all for coming. My name is Reem Saleh, and I'm the Associate Director for External Relations and Partnerships at the Art Center at NYU Abu Dhabi. This Arts Chat is part of our virtual Off the Stage series, which also includes community dinners, visits to NYUAD classes, and post-show Q&As. Even though we're not able to meet in person, unfortunately, we still want to bring the artists to our community. Make sure to subscribe to our newsletter or check out Off the Stage tab on our website. I want to thank RealAD creative team for taking the time to chat with us tonight. Preston Martin, Director, Gina Phillips, Associate Director, Audrey Hales, Movement Director, Matthew Marsh, Music Director, NYUAD student Lili Khamizan, Project Manager, and Tina Wadwa, Director of Student Success and Wellbeing for NYU Abu Dhabi. The talk is moderated by Tatiana Brown, NYUAD final year student who also performed in last year's show. I also want to thank the Career Development Center at NYU Abu Dhabi for partnering with us. As a reminder, as you already noticed, this Arts Chat will be recorded for social media and internal archiving purposes. Now, giving the floor to Tatiana.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the RealAD Arts Chat. We're so excited to have you all here. I know there's been so much enthusiasm around RealAD, and it's such an important tradition that happens every single year. I'm so excited to have the RealAD team with us today. We have a lot to talk about and so much to get through. So I just want to start with all of my thanks, all of my gratitude, all of my love. I would love it if our panelists could introduce themselves, maybe give us a little bit of background about the role that you play in bringing the show to life. I will call on you individually to make that process a little easier. So we can start with Preston.
Hi, it is really an honor to be here to speak about the process and to see so many faces from throughout the years of the project, which is really quite emotional and amazing and special. So thank you for being here and for having the whole team here to talk about this, as Tatiana said, this tradition. I am an actor and director in New York City, and I actually started with the very first reality show ever in New York City in 2005. We just completed our 16th season of the reality show Project at Large, which is wild. But I started as an actor. I started as a Tatiana in the group, an actor and a writer with Liz Suedos, who we would be remiss to not name, who started this project, an incredible downtown theater artist in New York. And I started as her assistant director on the project once I graduated from NYU, and then gradually sort of rose through the ranks to direct the shows in New York, Abu Dhabi, and Shanghai. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Preston. I want to move on to Gina.
Hi, this is so absolutely delightful. I'm really grateful to be a part of this conversation, and seeing everyone's faces that I haven't seen in a while is making me really happy right now. So I am the associate director of the RealAD show, which took a different shape this year, as you can imagine, than it has in the past. Usually this means helping to facilitate the generating of material and editing material with our cast, and then ultimately staging that material, which of course didn't happen this year. So this year my role stayed the same in terms of kind of having eyes on all the pieces, and kind of working with our cast to shape these pieces and synthesizing their vision with the messaging about mental health that is really important that we communicate. And then a big part of my role this year was just tracking the progress of all of the work that was being created, and making sure that everyone sort of had the resources that they need to continue to generate material, I won't screen share the spreadsheet that we were working from because it would make actually my brain explode to look at right now. But yeah, that sort of actually, I feel like Lily and I actually really worked in tandem this year as I branched out to be sort of a project manager also because of the sort of remote nature of the work. And I'm sure we'll get to, I was in the reality show just a couple years ago. And I had the great pleasure and honor of working with Liz and learned so much from her as I continue to learn from all of the students that we're working with. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that. Thanks, Tatiana.
Thank you, Gina. I just want to point out, last time I saw Gina was right before she got married, which was right before our show last year. So we wish her a very happy first year of marriage. I love that for you.
It's been a wild ride. Thank you for saying that. It was so sweet.
Of course. Matthew, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matthew Dean Marsh. I am the music director for Real AD, and this was my second year on the project with Real AD. I've been working with the New York show 7 years now, I think. Yeah, and it's just really good. We worked a lot this year, obviously, in isolated chamber boxes. And it's really nice to put, this is actually the first time I got to watch a show, a reality show, because I'm usually in the reality show on stage playing the piano. So this time I got to craft the pieces with the students and sit on my couch and watch it with everybody else. And that was a really special thing for me this year to be able to get to see it. But now I get to see the audience a little bit right now, so I'm very happy to be here. So thanks for having me.
I love that. I want to point out that Matthew is also the icon of underscoring any feeling you may have. It's possible in this life. It really is. So,
Thank you.
Of course. Miss Audrey.
Hey, y'all. I'm Audrey. I was movement director. And yeah, to echo folks, what an honor to, particularly this year, experience this challenge and work through this challenge with the group that we had. Yeah, unlike Preston and Gina, I tried to be in the reality show a couple years ago when we were in college, and Liz Swados said, "You've got some more work to do before you're ready." And I said, "All right, okay, give me 10 years. Give me 10 years, then I'll come back and I'll try again." And I feel very grateful. I feel like my role is to offer prompts to folks, movement prompts, and to affirm and lift the gestural work and the movement that naturally comes out of our cast's body. And that is such a dope job for me to have. And Preston and I were, I feel so excited to be using our crafting skills digitally this year and editing video. And that was my first time sort of using my choreographic mind in that way as it pertains to video. Yeah, what else? That's it. I'm so happy to see so many faces. Yeah, thanks, Tatiana.
No worries. And she's good at it too, yo. Audrey had us, any given day. Can we have Lily?
Hi, I'm Lily. I am now a junior in my third year. I'm a bio major, surprisingly for a lot of people. But I saw Real AD my freshman year and thought I need to be in it. So I auditioned my freshman year. Preston was like, "No, let's not bring her in just yet." So I waited one more year, expanded a ton more stage management skills, and then Preston was like, "Let's bring her in." So this summer I worked a lot with Gina. I've learned so much from you, Gina, and I just want to thank you for that. So yeah, it's been great.
Thank you so much, Lily. And lastly, we'll have Tina.
Hi, everyone. I really just want to thank the Art Center first for doing this, because this like 4 minutes or 5 minutes has been already so like uplifting for me, to have this space to hear from these wonderful people. My office is involved in sort of like overseeing the logistics for the Really Do show. So some of the behind the scenes work, Azam, who works for my office, does so much when it comes to that space as well. And I joined the cast and the creative team for what we called roundtables. And so that's a space for us to sort of explore specific mental health topics, for me to sort of share my knowledge about them, and then discuss how it might be framed. Yeah, I'm a small part of the puzzle, but I really just love this. I just really love this space so much. And I have learned so much from the creative team, but also the cast every year. So I'm honored to be here.
I just want to add, Tina is a huge part of the puzzle, huge. Seeing the fingers pointing, we're all on the same page. Tina, I actually wanted to follow up with what you said about the roundtable, because I know that you usually play a really big role in helping the cast like point out sort of student health themes and wellness themes at the roundtables. I wanted to ask you, how did those themes look different this year, specifically from other years?
That's a great question. You know, what I think, you know, the experiences, the way that it's felt for me in the past, so I'll just speak from my experience, is that there are certain topics that we are generally going to cover. So we're generally going to talk about roommate issues. We're generally going to talk about, how to sort of navigate, specific situations. I can't think of other ones, but like, consent or, mental health in this framework. And I think, because we know that those tend to be the experiences university students, will have to grapple with as they transition into their first year, though the cast always comes in with ideas of what they want to do, speak about, things that are really important and relevant to them. What felt different for me was that I felt like there's so much going on with the Black Lives Matter movement, with COVID, with Zooming all the time. And so it felt like there was this more organic movement in terms of the ideas. And so that felt slightly different for me. It felt like it was much more, the result of the show this year felt very much based in the here and now. So the issues that I think the reason it was so impactful for so many people was that it felt like, when I was watching the shows in bits and pieces, I was getting, Preston and Gina were sending me pieces. I felt like it was therapeutic, in that I was like, yes, exactly. That's exactly what I'm feeling right now. And so I think it was really transferable. And I think it was hitting on a lot of the struggles that we all have been feeling during these strange times. And I think that the cast did a wonderful job putting words to some things that are really hard to sort of sum up for us. And so that was a slight difference. And then, I think also, just how things were, in the past, we've been able to sort of make changes last minute, but because these were recorded in advance and so much goes into that, the process kind of, the flow of the process went a bit differently. And in some ways I preferred it, because I felt like there's a lot that gets left up to the last moment in the past, where this felt like there was more that we were doing as we were going along. So I really liked that. And then it was just really beautiful to see the whole thing come together when I had seen just pieces of it, so it was a really beautiful, the cast, the creative team, I think they just did a beautiful, beautiful job turning a situation that could have been, good into something that was phenomenal and had so much heart behind it. And so that was just really incredible for me.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, like, y'all, what a show. Talk about resilience, talk about making it work, talk about putting craft to the virtual space. Like, I could gas you all day, so we're not going to do that. But I did want to touch on something you brought up, Tina, about how, in the face of like Black Lives Matter and all of these different things that were popping up, I could just hear Preston's voice in the back of my head saying, and do take care of yourselves before we pinky at the end of rehearsal. You know, performing can really demand a lot from the body, from the mind, and from the spirit on any given day. And it seems like most given days lately are just also demanding a lot on the mind and the body and the spirit. So given the many layers of struggle 2020 has brought about, Preston and Gina, how have you framed and acted on practices of self-care for everyone in the cast and the team?
Gina, do you want to speak to it?
Sure. I mean, I think the first thing that we tried to do was to just prioritize connecting with everyone in the cast on a personal level. That just was incredibly important to all of us on the creative team to build a foundation of one-on-one personal connection, so that folks felt like they were able to express their needs and boundaries to us. And you know, and it's of course a two-way street, and we also, along with that, sort of every step of the way tried our best to, and I'm actually, because I was sort of the calendar czar of this process, I'm thinking about this in terms of like deadlines, outside work. The show this year demanded so much, and I just want to celebrate the cast for this. The show this year demanded so much work outside of the rehearsal room, and it was extraordinary. Yes, clap it up. Muted claps. It was just extraordinary, the amount of energy and and the volume of work that folks generated outside of rehearsal blew us away. And it was hard for me, I think, as a member of the creative team, you know, my impulse is like, more, generate more material. And I had to kind of check in with myself every once in a while and say, like, okay, let's make sure that we're not asking, that the asks that we're making are as reasonable as they can be. But yeah, I think beyond that, and I'll let Preston speak to this too, like we really tried to create a culture of connecting with one another, even across the divide. And I will also say that the cast made it really easy to do that. They showed up with such open hearts. They were so open to the process and to building relationships with one another. And I think that was crucial in actually creating a space of trust where, you know, a cast member could email me and say, hey, I need another day or two on that assignment. And, you know, and likewise, you know, the creative team would say, like, this is the deadline we would like. If that's crazy, maybe let us know. I hope that all makes sense.
Yeah, the connectivity was definitely the number one thing. It's just right away, it was one-on-one conversations with everybody via Zoom, both about like, what's your theater experience, and but also what's your like music preferences, and also how are you doing right now? And it sort of, you know, Tina was speaking about some of the things that we sort of like about this version of working, which was important to keep thinking like, okay, we don't get the thing that we want. We don't get the normalcy. What are some positives of this? And I think one of them was getting to connect one-on-one, because, you know, as some of the people who have been in the process in the past know, we're so busy, we are running the heck around all summer, that sometimes we don't get to have that one-on-one time in a way that this process this year did afford us, which was really special. And then also, I think this is going to be a little bit weird to say, and I want to say that it's balanced with some listening to inside needs, but something that Liz really brought up over and over and over again is the idea of like, put it in the work. So when you're going through the dangers of getting, feeling the darkness of the moment, that turning around and being able to put that into the work, and specifically for the reality show project, knowing that that work is then going to shed light for other people, putting your darkness into the work is going to prism out into light for others, is something that I think was specifically important this summer, because I think people were craving just an outlet of any kind to deal with what we were going through. So it was a challenge to be going through a specific prolonged trauma and then also have to show up and talk about it, and then have to then distill it into entertainment. that's you know, a thing to have to navigate. And I also say put it into the work with the acknowledgement that sometimes what that means is removing yourself, which is part of the work, and sort of seeing it from outside of the emotional state that you're in or the work that you're trying to create. So it doesn't just mean like work 23 hours a day. That's not what I mean by that. But I think that's something that we try to bring up, and also to remember that the vulnerabilities that we're working through are a gift that we're trying to give to the audience. And so keeping the audience always at the front of the work.
I also want to just add that there's a standing practice in every year of the show, where if within these roundtable discussions, if something is triggering or just too much, we always actively give folks in the room permission to tap out of a conversation if we're getting into territory that's just, it doesn't feel safe to be a part of. Oh my gosh, Matha is cracking me up in the chat. But yeah, that feels like also an important part of the practice, like inviting vulnerability, and also making sure that there is a boundary available should folks need to set it. And I also just want to shout out Audrey for bringing in an active practice of self-care into our work always, and especially this year. Audrey is, and I'm curious about how the cast might respond, but we always started each day with in our rooms all over the world, getting up and getting in tune with our bodies, and Audrey led us through that. And that, for me, especially rehearsing at 8 a.m. was an incredible way of just like being present and grounded and ready to work together. So Audrey really brought that into the space as well.
And this is all beautiful, because I think these things about connection, these things about putting it in the work and inviting vulnerability, that's always been a trend, but it seems like it's especially present now. And Audrey, I remember so many of your exercises being built on this like energy we gathered from around us, and extending a hand out to someone, or moving our faces in response to the expressions of other people. And you always encourage us to move through any shame or hesitation. Like, the substantial growth that happened over the course of the summer, at least for me, was just ridiculous. So what I'd like to know is, what have you done to build that comfort and connection between castmates? And how do you connect with cast members to encourage that beautiful transition that we all went through of just freeing our bodies and opening up?
Well, truly, I do want to hear from the cast on that, but I can say, to again echo that I think folks were already ready and so open-hearted and so willing and excited to try to be with one another, which really opened up sort of a vessel for so many activations. So it wasn't, I don't feel like it was me sort of giving us ways to connect. It was sort of me just being like, yes, you're connecting, very good. and I'll record that and we'll put it in the show. You know, I feel, and I said this to everyone. Preston talked about our one-on-ones. I said it to everyone. I said, I don't know what I'm doing this year. This year is so different, and I truly don't know. And we'll find it together. And we did. I really have to give it up to the cast and our team. I feel we all really worked in such a, it's always a collaborative thing, obviously, but this year was a really deep version of that. And I think truly, and I'll shout out the team for this. I think self-care in the culture of the Real ID show really looks like deep listening. That we really, really try to listen to what folks are saying or what folks are not saying. And yeah, I think that also means listening to ourselves. So truly, at those, for us, 8 a.m., or for us on the East Coast of the States, 8 a.m. rehearsals, I personally needed to just breathe and touch my forehead and, touch the back of my head and say I was good enough and full of light. And I did for us what I needed to do for myself. It was selfish. Yes, it was. And I am glad to see that it worked out. Yeah.
Can I add one thing to just continue to celebrate Audrey very briefly? What I witness in Audrey's practice is that pleasure in movement is at the core. What I experience is that pleasure in movement is like at the core of Audrey's movement practice. And it was really special to have someone help to guide me through like pleasurable movement. And I think that that's just I think that it's a really special, potent approach that makes movement accessible to people who maybe aren't used to moving in these non-pedestrian ways. So just something I want to shout out that I witnessed in Audrey's practice.
And I have to say that Audrey's pleasure in movement is contagious. At least that's something I've seen. I'm sure other cast members can hear me on that. And it's something that, Audrey, the work that you've done, I have to stand. I do want to talk a little bit about pleasure in music and transition to Matthew, because I think that's another way that we've seen this like contagious pleasure that we've all been able to participate in. Yeah. Matthew, I've noticed that like when I watched the show that it transitioned away from like the traditional set of like guitar and piano and drums, violin, and started using things like synthesizers and bass and autotune and all of this really cool stuff that at least personally I hadn't seen. So I wanted to ask you, how do you think that the music has evolved this year, and how did you all decide what new features to include?
That's a great question. Thank you. When we were presented with this, we're going to do this virtual show, the first thought I had was piano and a drum set doesn't work if you're watching on a phone or if you're watching on a device. Like it just becomes static after a while. And I also thought, well, if I'm going to be trapped at home learning how to record people from around the world, I'm going to try to learn as many new skills as I possibly can. And I've been wanting to learn how to do like pop production and current genre production. So I got to use some of the money I made from doing the 2 reality shows to invest in a new computer and Logic. And I did that at the outset of the summer so that I could, indeed learn how to produce in a new way. And in terms of like the genres or the aesthetic that I was looking for, it would kind of, just like in the room where things kind of come to us intuitively, I would listen, I would take things in, and Preston or Gina or Audrey would say like, we don't want this to sound too sad or too sweet or too, like, we need to have the emotion in it, but it needs to be driving. So like, I would just look for creative solutions. And then also just having the raw material from these students, where some of them sound so good, it's angering. It would just anger me how good they sounded, or just how strong the songwriting was. I didn't have to like do too much guesswork. It wasn't like, oh, what am I going to do to make this sound good? It was just, oh, I know this is going to sound great. We're going to go and it's going to sound good. It was different this year because so much of my job is usually to be in the room listening and not letting any of the cast members fall off, like, and ever. Like, I have to be like on them every day. Like, this is your note. This is where you need to be, right? And this year is just like, I need one good take. You know, I need one good take and you need to send it to me so I can craft something from it. So it was just a very different process. I really did enjoy it. There was, I learned new skills, and yeah, I was really excited with the sound that we got to in the end.
Can vouch that it was fabulous. I'm super proud. First of all, shout out to you for learning all of this. I'm not surprised. Let me not get into it. And yeah, I mean, I think it ended up making the show the show was just extremely dynamic. Did y'all feel that? Like the show was so dynamic this year. And there were so many layers from like cast videos, neon lights, and shots of partial faces. And we got like these pop vibes. And like, I just want to know, like, how did you all decide on all the mediums we saw in the show? So experimental. Yes, Suzanne, I totally agree on that. How did you all decide on the mediums we saw in the show? What went into making them sync together to tell a story?
I can talk a little bit just because I feel spotlight right now. We were definitely, and a lot of this I have to shout out Preston. We were very aware that if we tried to make this, just like with every reality show, if we tried to make it too slick, that there was going to be the sincerity would be lacking, right? So embracing experimental, embracing cheap, and embracing kind of like punk trash, just thrown together aesthetic was our friend, and then intersplicing with moments of very slick, just like we do at the live show. That we were, I think that was kind of one of the strengths we went to, also because we were just compiling material from all around the world to just be able to have the option to throw it together as quick and easy as we needed to. Preston, do you want to talk about like how that kind of came together? Because I think a lot of it was surprising to us as we went through.
Yeah, I mean, the show always is about resources. And specifically this summer, what I realized that also means is like how to tap into resourcefulness, which this show this year, what I wanted to make sure we all got on board with was not, like Matthew said, to do like a slick, look at this episode of Netflix. Like, that's not what I hoped for the show ever, because number one, I wanted to keep it theater somehow, even though it's video. And number two, I wanted to show that like, you don't have to be an expert at any of this stuff to put your voice in the room or to start learning new ways to be there for each other and for yourself. And so it really did come up. I was like, I don't know exactly the levels of everybody's editing experience, but everybody was just like, well, here's an attempt at one video into another of just like, here's a take and a take, and does that equal anything? I don't know. So I wanted it to look like people learning. I wanted it to look like resourcefulness, basically. And so what's funny then is that then we're sitting there and there were multiple editors. Audrey edited, multiple cast members edited as well. And I think you can see the learning happening. And I think I'm sharing this to say it so that everybody gets brave. But it also is vulnerable for me to share that like I didn't know what I was doing at all. And every video that came through, I accidentally stumbled upon like another button on the workspace I was using. And I was like, what does this button do? And usually that button became then the aesthetic for that entire song or that entire sketch or what have you. And so, yeah, it was following the listening that I think that Audrey brought up of like, listen to what the piece wants and what it needs, and then just listen to yourself as you're exploring the new medium. And also the show followed the same arc, interestingly. Like it always goes from like, what is our location? Who is around us? How do we admit our vulnerabilities inside of the ways that we feel like we are lacking? How do we see what other people are actually lacking? How do you stand up for the people? How do you bring yourself to help their lack? And then sort of the existentialism of what it means to be 18 years old and coming to potentially a new country, definitely a new community, and to show up for yourself and for others. So that arc, we actually just followed the same as always has been.
I know we want to get to the Q&A, but I just want to weigh in with one more thing, which is that often the decision was not ours. The students, the cast, came to the work with a very specific vision and genre, and this kind of speaks to Maitha's question, but so maybe I'll save it. But often a lot of the work came with a very specific vision, a very specific shot list, or in some cases, a lot of students, a lot of our cast edited fully wrote, shot, edited a sketch, and we're like, hey, we made this. So a lot of the time, it wasn't us deciding what the tone was or how it looked. It was purely, you know, part of what our cast was generating.
And I have to say, you all really, really pulled it off. The first thing that came to my mind when I was watching the show is there's so many moving pieces to this, in ways that it had a complexity that I think would be difficult to pull off in person, right? Unless we had some kind of screen behind us to be able to add all of these extra elements and things. And I was so impressed. And it made me think, who is the stage manager? Who is the production manager who is coordinating all of these little pieces? Lily, I see you I have to know. So Lily, you weren't only a project manager, but a project manager on a production that moved well beyond its traditional presence, right? Gina mentioned a very scary spreadsheet that I'd like to know more about, but I just want to know, what did organization look like? How were these shots selected? How did you all decide what goes where and why and things like that? I would love to know, yeah, your logic behind that.
Well, so a lot of it was on Google Drive, and I love Google Drive. So it's very easy to just, create a bunch of folders, and then as the work developed, it was very much just like, hey, Matthew, where do you want me to put this? Hey, Gina, where do you want me to put this? And through constant communication about what was easiest for them to then be able to compile all the work that we made into the same space. And so it really, like, now thinking back, it feels really fast and it felt really easy. Like, I didn't feel like it was a hard job to do, especially with the cast being, like, I hadn't met 3 of them before and I was so nervous. I didn't know how I was gonna, stage manage and create a room that was comfortable and full of trust. And what I normally like to do as a stage manager is during breaks, I would give everybody gummy bears and candy, but I couldn't exactly do that with everybody across the world. And so methods were changed. And I think that, like, rituals that we did, like, we clapped hands at the end of rehearsal, and then at the start we would always genuinely check in with everything that's going on in the world right now. And so the fact that we brought all of ourselves into this space every single time we went to rehearsal meant that we were all present and we're all ready to just put in all of us into it. So I'll give you jelly. Just come over, Siohi. I'll give it to you.
No, that's lovely. That's lovely. And I can only imagine, like, the gummy bear jealousy is really serious right now, but I'm gonna, it seems a lot of people in the chat look a little salty. It's okay, y'all. I just want to honor and celebrate you all. We're gonna get to questions from, I know everybody is just so anxious to ask so many things. We have a lot of good questions in the chat in about 5 minutes. I did have one last question that is a bit personal that I wanted to ask you all, and that is this. I know that this is not the first rodeo for any of you when it comes to Real AD, but it is the first virtual rodeo. And given that you approach this production process in a totally new orientation, I want to know, what did you learn about each other? A, but also what did you learn about yourselves? B. And I would love it if I could hear from all of our panelists before we switch over to questions. So I will do the same order we did earlier. I'll start with Preston, Gina, Matthew, Audrey, Tina, then Lily.
Wow. I think that something I learned is how delicate and important and like easy and difficult trust is in general, of like really not knowing where this was going to spit us out. Knowing that like we were all like, we're just gonna say yes, and then we're just gonna show up every day and keep saying yes. And the power of being able to do that, but knowing that there's just like a lot to explore inside of how you can be there for each other, whether that means trying to, what's the word when you think ahead? You're already ahead of it. Oh, I can't remember the word. Anticipating people's needs. Exactly. Which
Maitha.
Hello.
Thank you, Maitha.
Thank you. Anticipating each other's needs, or whether that is saying like, hey, I don't know what you need. Like all of those things are so important to be able to express. And I learned a lot about the ways that I don't know how to do that and the ways that I can be better at that. That's something I feel like I learned about both myself and everybody. But also just how, like, you know, there's all these, I guess, sort of jokes. This is really dating myself, but I remember there was like these old games back where it was like, whoever's on the top 6 of your friend list, when it's on the side, these are the people you're going to go through an apocalypse with. Who's going to do what? And I was just like, oh my God, these are the people that I want to go through the apocalypse with, because we all showed up for each other in ways that were so exciting and beautiful. And so learning that we can do that is something. I don't know. That was hard to answer. Thanks, Tatiana.
You did great. You did great. Gina?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I mean, I think I learned actually a lot. I learned that Preston and Audrey are very good at editing video, which is not a skill that I've gotten to witness. And it really blew me away. I learned that Matthew can produce pop bops, like many of them very quickly. So it was really exciting to witness these new skills from my collaborators. And I learned that this is so, I don't know, I'm a very visual thinker. I learned a lot about how I need information to be communicated to me. And I learned about how much I value clarity in communicating information, because that was a huge part of my role this year. And it is a personal question, so I'll give a personal answer. I also just, I valued our collaboration with our students on a new level this year, because connection has been so hard to come by over the past 6 months, to the point where, you know, I have, like all of us, I'm sure, have had moments where I'm like just feeling really down, like really having the COVID blues, and sort of the global blues, and would close my eyes and just imagine all of our cast members and would feel better, just visualizing everyone's faces. And that's a very personal response, but I think I learned anew. I mean, I've been doing this job for 7 years now, and it was really good to learn anew how much I value that collaboration and also how little I know about the process in this new framework.
That's beautiful, Gina. Matthew?
Yeah, I will just echoing what Preston and Gina said. The skill sets, I mean, I've worked with the three of them before for many years, and I've always known what they were capable of, but to view everyone in these like isolated chambers and still see them committed to doing good work, it really personalized it for me, to see how committed the team was. I learned from the cast that you can take a situation that anyone would think is like strange or weird and not make it strange or weird, and just like completely normalize it from the get-go and just get to work because it has to be done. There was nothing like weird or uncomfortable about trying to get on track with this process. It was just like from the get-go, like, this is what we're here to do. We're gonna do it. We don't know what it's gonna be, but we have a pretty good sense that it's gonna be good. So let's like have a good time while we do it. And for me, I kind of learned how like, and this is like a little opposed to what Gina said, how like, I think there's so much that I don't need to know, like during a process. Like I was surprised at how like I knew so many things were being taken care of, but I had my list and all I needed to take care of right now was like X, Y, and Z, and everything else I got to let go. And maybe it's because my department was just music, so I just was focusing on that. But there was so much about this year where I was like, I have no idea what this is gonna look like or what this is gonna be in the end. And I didn't even get to see it until you all saw it. I saw it like in the final presentation. It was like, what? We did this? Like, whoa. So there was this kind of like, just, I don't know, it was really cool to just be like, what information do I need right now for this next step, and just move forward in that little microcosm of the process. So yeah, thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Audrey?
It is a very good question. I think the thing that is sticking out for me is something that I've been repeating to myself this summer, something that I found this summer that I've been repeating, is that, and this is so simple, but it turns out if I say yes to myself, I immediately become more capable. Simple little thing, but it turns out if I just say, well, I don't know how to do this thing, but I think I want to do it. Yes. I think that I learned that first from the cast. I think I learned it from our team. And I also, somebody brought up trust already. I mean, I think that the word has been floating around. Collaboration, obviously it has so much to do with trust. And I think I learned a few different manifestations of trust in this process. I'm going to struggle, I think, to articulate it. But the cast certainly gave us, the team, so much trust. They really sort of were so willing to be in conversation and in dialogue with us about their work. And I think the team, for me, you know, similarly to Matthew, like I, you know, picked up, what's the thing? Adobe, the Adobe suite, which I've been dreaming of for so long. And I just have to say, I just feel so superpowered by the team who just decided to say yes to me. Yes, we trust that you can and will learn this thing, or can do this thing that you say you want to do. So please go forth. And I'd say, you know, like Gina said earlier, gosh, this was the deadline, and here it is several Sundays past that. May I turn it in next Sunday? And I think I just learned, and again, this is so simple, but truly, I just learned the power of yes, saying yes to ourselves, saying yes to the people that we're in community with, saying yes to the desires that we have for ourselves and our folks. I that is the most valuable thing I can like take from this year, and carry with me. And I just, yeah, want to share that with everybody. Say yes to yourself.
I say yes to you. I say yes to that. I'm getting that tatted and henna. Yes, absolutely. Let's have Lily and then we'll have Tina.
Adding on to what everybody else said, exactly all of that. I think that, you know, trusting, so as the stage manager, especially in previous projects, it's so, you know, being the, you know, the center of all information, and that being more important than ever now to be able to, you know, communicate with the creative team how the cast is doing and vice versa. And, you know, learning how about everybody else, about how, you know, once they're in the process, they're willing to put in 150% of themselves. And that's exactly the kind of room that I want to be in. And again, this being a personal question, I think that I learned how, if I let myself, I, you know, can, and reminded so much by Preston, Gina, and everybody in the room that I am loved and I am appreciated throughout the whole summer, being in a space at home where my interests aren't supported. And so every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and especially on my birthday, being reminded that, you know, all my work is appreciated and you know, cared for. And so I think that letting myself be vulnerable and letting myself be supported by this massive net of the creative team, of the cast, is one that I now constantly want to jump into. So yeah.
Beautiful. Tina, you want to close us out?
Sure, and I'll be brief because I see the time. But I think I learned so much of what was said, but something that I don't think we focused on too much was I learned from the creative team and the cast that you can foster meaningful, trusting, beautiful cohesion on Zoom. And I don't think that I had felt that deeply in any space. And even though I wasn't there all the time and not even there, you know, the majority of the time, but it still, like those spaces, I really just felt like there were just unlike any other space that I had experienced via Zoom. And so I've learned to sort of take some of the little things that that you all were doing and sort of incorporate them into the work that I do with in my work and in my spaces. And so like that was to me like something that I'm just still blown away by, the connection and the trust and the cohesion, which I think is so hard to do via Zoom, or I find it hard to do via Zoom. And so that was really beautiful. I think personally I learned two things. One is, and I'll get a little bit emotional saying this, but like how deeply I needed this piece, like how much that it like spoke to the things that I've been struggling with, or that like I, you know, see as being challenges. And so like both in terms of like the final product, but just the process of even contributing to it was a really, really important space for me in this moment, in this time. And that just, you know, that will always be like something that I really hold on to. And then I also learned I'm a terrible actress. I'm a horrible actress. And, you know, I kind of knew that, but if you knew how many takes I had to do and the outtakes that my husband is holding hostage, you would know that to be true. But I was really happy to have a little piece of myself in there. But thank you for that beautiful, all these questions, Tatiana. These were beautiful questions. So thank you for that.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I'm in complete agreement with all of the chat. I haven't seen no written in so many ways in such a long time, but I wanna transition us into some of the questions from the chat. People are just desperate, and I understand why. So we don't have a long time. We have about 10 minutes. So I'm gonna go ahead and read off the ones that we have in the chat so far. If we have time and there's anybody who has not had their question answered, feel free to just turn your mic on and go for it. So I'll start with our question from Bill. So Bill says, a lot of what I'm thinking about for the Arts Center this year is about embracing the constraints and focusing on what new opportunities are opened up as opposed to what is missing. Assuming next year you're able to be back in a theater all on stage together with a full audience in the seats, is that what you would do? What new aspects from this year's edition will you want to carry into the future? Very good question, Bill. Anybody can take it, go for it.
This question is, I just unmuted very quickly because I saw this question and I was like, oh my God, I haven't thought of that. But now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, yeah, there are aspects of this iteration of the show that I would absolutely want to hold on to. I mean, dreaming about it now, I think it would be incredible to be able to somehow hybridize the show where, you know, we film a series of sketches or songs so that, you know, that material can continue to be a part of the culture and student life at NYUAD. That's something that's really exciting to me about this iteration of the show, which is, you know, the magic and the curse of theater is that it is ephemeral. It is something that happens in a moment and then it's gone. And I'm dreaming about a reality where we can sort of have our cake and eat it too, and be able to have this like magic performance where everyone's in the same space. And thinking about it now, I'm really actually missing all being in the Red Theater together. But yeah, I think that in a dream, we would be able to do both things. You know, part of what a core value of reality show across campuses is scrappiness. Because that's theater, baby. You got to just like use your resources, and B, because we, as Preston was saying, I think scrappiness leads to something that people can really connect to. So I think that we would want to continue to like have our empty stage and our chairs and sort of our very pared down version of the show on stage. But I'm also seeing a version of that where, who knows, where like we see we do film and edit sketches and we see them as part of the live performance, and part of the live performance maybe responds to a sketch that we see on a scrim behind the actors. It's such a great question. I'll leave that there. I hope that was coherent. I got very excited just now, actually, thinking about that.
I think it would be cool too to hybridize the process. Like if we did 4 weeks via Zoom and then like halfway through the summer, we met up and and put the show up in person. There was something about the isolated nature where I feel like students were actually able to process and generate material from a very individual lens. Without having to deal with the pressure of being in the space with each other and getting to know all these new personalities and deal with, you know, where am I standing and who's standing in front of me. There was something very thoughtful about their work. And I do think it was because we had 8 thoughtful people, but I think it was also because they had a little bit more room to think. So I think it would be interesting to do a process half and half where they start where they are, writing, generating material, and building towards a live show that eventually halfway through the summer we'd meet up and get to dance. Hi, Bill.
I echo that, but I just want to add one small thing I'm also super interested in this hybridization, mostly because I think it like is so hard. like to understand where we are, we have to understand where we were, right? So if there's elements of this, we're going to be so hungry for live theater when it is possible for us. We're going to eat it up. There's going to be a resurgence. It's going to be the tastiest, most flavorful that we've had. And so I think if there's a way to just really show this, some of the, to give context for this moment by showing and making this element, these pieces, these videos part of the live element, I think would really bring so much extra understanding of sort of where we stand emotionally and mentally with the picking up the pieces after this pause away from each other in person.
Beautiful, y'all.
Thank you.
Are there any other thoughts on that question before we move on? No? Cool. I want to offer this question from Ethan David Lee. Thank you for asking it. It says, what steps did you take to develop a sense of community and trust that is necessary for creating work and which comes so much more naturally in person?
Yeah, I think that is a great question, and that was the creative team's big question at the top of the process. I think that the one-on-one conversations with the actors, for me, actors, writers, editors, our cast, for me, was crucial at the top of the process, to just check in on a personal level, so that was the baseline, and then we layered the work on top of it. But yeah, that for me was, I think, one of the most valuable steps we took in establishing trust.
I think also, this was said, I believe earlier, that we really prioritized grounding ourselves in the room. So we began a certain way, we ended a certain way every day. And I think the team also did a really great job of putting language to a culture of creativity for the cast, so that when we were in the room together, we were sort of on the same page. And when folks were not in the room working on their own, I think we really tried to encourage folks, and Preston is in my ear, just to be gentle with themselves, to be open with themselves, and to allow whatever needed to come out first to come out, so that we could together sort of work to where it wanted to be. And I think also creating space in our Zoom rooms to like dig through a piece as it currently stood and add in some things. I think Zoom can feel so listen, I had a 10-year reunion on Zoom this year. Ew, gross, it was terrible. No, it was wonderful. We had a great time, but it was so awkward. Okay. Feels very presentational, right? You show up and you're like, here's what I got. It's my face, it's me. But I think in the room, we really tried to do everything we could, to find ways to reach through, which meant you can be a mess here, you can be quiet here, you can be loud here, you can figure things out here.
So much of that, just to piggyback, was intentional deconstructing of the lens of communication we were using, especially because Zoom at that point was still kind of novel. Preston and Audrey both did very intentional things to do exercises that kind of took the meta nature of Zoom and turned it on its head. One of which, I think, Preston, you had everybody take photos of their workspace, like, so we could see what they were seeing. Audrey had them close to the camera. She had them far away from the camera. A lot of the first few weeks were spent kind of just like figuring out this thing. And I think a lot of that, which I don't know if you guys intentionally knew this, I think there's a lot of trust building happening in those moments too.
Yeah, adding on to that, it was just like when, you know, in that exercise where we asked asked everybody to take a photo of what the space that they were working in. It was very much like each of us inviting everyone into our own space where we are being creative for the 2 hour allotment every other day. And so, and then I think also it was, breaking down the fact that we didn't need to be, completely ready and prepared every rehearsal. We didn't need to look like it was like we were ready to present something. Like I was wearing PJs during rehearsal because it was 10 at night for me. And keeping count of whether Preston wore the same shirt every day. It was just like breaking down, the formalities of everything so that we were all friends with each other and a lot closer that way. So
I'd love to add to that too. It was every other day, Lily. So if I'm wearing the same, just Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, same shirt schedule. Something that we did, and this relates to Lindsay's question that I saw in the chat, which was kind of like, what did a rehearsal look like? And something that was a part of our process early on was making space for collaboration between cast members on Zoom. So we would give an assignment, create breakout rooms and say, okay, you have 10 minutes to create a 2-minute long piece, go, which is sort of a creating trust through baptism by fire. Like you have to work together. You're going to be staring at one another's faces on a screen. You've got to find a way to work together, which I like to think helped create trust, and also like helped to seed a spirit of collaboration that was astonishing to see our students writing songs with one another in opposite hemispheres later on. Also, we just trusted. I think the creative team realized that all we could do was trust that everyone was going to show up and really be present and focused and not be scrolling on whatever or private chatting whatever or WhatsApping the entire time. Like there was, to be totally candid, I think, and this, if you're teaching over Zoom right now, I'm sure a lot of people have this experience. There's a little thought that's like, are they really with me? Are they really here? And I very quickly was like, stop, shut up. We're trusting that they're here. And that was a really great decision because everyone was.
Lovely, 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 lovely. I know we're a little over time, but I want to get to this question because it's so interesting. She asked, how did you incorporate / adapt theatrical concepts and practices like breaking the fourth wall or the button of comedy skits, performance within a performance, etc., into this new medium of performance?
Well, the reality show is transitions, and that's about it. So we did take care. This was definitely the most challenging aspect because though the cast and the team came up with each of the individual pieces, there was NYU Media, which should get a huge shout out and a huge thanks for their guidance. And also they made the final package to sew all the pieces into one long piece. And so it was still the exact same sort of as like, so what is the connective tissue between that piece and that piece, both in tone, but also just like literally what's the end of one and the beginning of another. And so that did take just the usual sitting down, and that's almost always musical, not necessarily meaning music, but just oral. So that was a really interesting challenge to say like, well, we don't even know the order yet, but if this is the ending of that piece, that like gives us a stage wipe for the next piece. But it also was constant experimentation. And, I said this at the beginning of our process this year, is that the reality show was born out of experimentation and necessity. And so it was just, it was, we've talked about how Audrey was like, where are you in relationship to this rectangle, being close, being far away. if you look directly into this camera, which I don't think a lot of people do on Zoom, then that's like a whole other thing of like, this is a connection that is not this, which is me being here with you. So exploring the different levels of the camera relationship was huge. And like, we did a series of like, who is this camera to you? Is this camera a first year? Is this camera your parent? Is this camera somebody you have a crush on? Is this camera somebody you want to impress? So developing a relationship with the camera was huge inside of Fourth Wall, inside of show within a show ideas. And also to just, I think a few of us have said, like, just try something you never tried before that we know we can't try when it's, you know, a space that isn't full of you know, props. Chapstick. That also, just grabbing whatever's near you was definitely something that we practiced a lot inside of our rehearsals. Yeah, anybody else want to speak to how we built that?
I know we have to close out. I just want to say having a short form instead of a long form format made it very easy to adapt to video. You know, we're not like adapting Strindberg to Zoom. It's a bunch of 2-minute long sketches, which actually kind of lends itself to the form in a way that was, a part of it was actually, there was a lot of ease in that, which was cool to see.
And I'll say with music, I just made sure everything I produced when we did it ended with like a wipe. There was always just some sort of like thing that could wipe, and it could wipe into anything because I wasn't sure what it would wipe into. So when I was constructing things, I was just very clear to leave things like open-ended. And
to use footage that was not meant to be in the, like, people would give me takes, give us takes that we did not necessarily, they were like, this is a section that they'll definitely edit out. And instead I was like, well, that is perfect to make us look like human beings that are in a room that you're watching. And a lot of sort of outtakes or setup shots and such became the way ins and out of pieces too.
Yo, this is amazing. I just want to say this reminds me of why I love the creative process. I love the people here. I celebrate you, and I carry you all with me all the time. And I imagine I'm not the only person here who does. So many beautiful things were shared, and I just want to highlight some of the words that were shared so we can meditate on them a little bit. I personally am a really big fan of deep breaths, so I encourage you all to receive these with deep breathing. Close your eyes if you'd like, but I'm just going to read a few of them out here. Powerful, community care, experiment, trust, cohesion, connection, deep listening, release, pleasure, movement, belief, humanity, learning, building, capable, yes, baptism by fire, loved, and appreciated. I encourage you all to be emotional, to let this moment sit with you. I want to thank every single person here, our panelists, our cast members, our audience members. It's been a pleasure to share this moment with you all and to reunite. And you all are just lovely, and you remind me why I missed this show. And I miss you all so much. So I thank you, and I thank the Art Center for creating this space. And I want to pass it forward so we can have our closings. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Tatiana.
Thank you, Tatiana.
Thank you.
And a huge thank you to all of you, Tatiana, and bringing this really vulnerable conversation to the table here. And as the Art Center, we really missed being part of this process. And so we're so thrilled that you trusted us to talk about this new form and this way to build community and togetherness again. So we thank everyone. Please come back and see all of the ways that the Art Center is trying to kind of maintain this. We have more arts chats and workshops, and we're thrilled to have you guys part of it. So thank you so much, everybody, and see you all soon.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you,
Thank you. This was such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.